to the show. Congressman and House Homeland Security Committee Chairman Michael McCaul back with me now. Thanks for being on the show again.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Karina.
Appreciate you being in. Belgian authorities, let's begin with this, talking national security following the Brussels attacks, of course, but Belgian authorities releasing new video today of one of the suspects in the attacks who's still on the run. What's the U.S. involvement with this, just trying to track these people that are still at large?
Our federal law enforcement is engaged in this investigation, working with the Europeans, with the Belgians, the intelligence community as well, Interpol, the international police, in pretty much this manhunt for that third suspect. There are, my understanding is about 22 other suspects out there related to both the Paris and the Brussels attack. These are interrelated. It's the same network. The cells are have a lot of interrelationship to them. In fact, the individual Aboud, who came in as a mastermind of Paris, claims that he came in with 90 other foreign fighters from Syria. So that's the magnitude in Europe. I think the threat level is far greater in Europe than it is in the United States.
Yeah, you've said that you've been worried about Brussels for some time. What were the signs there, and could things have been prevented?
There were flags that went up prior to the case, and the Turkey officials warned them about some of these individuals in advance. And so when I was there prior to the Paris attacks, I was both in France and in Belgium. There was a lot of anxiety about an attack. This was right after the Charlie Hebdo attack, and in Paris, they were concerned about an active shooter plot like this one and a suicide bomber. And in Belgium, I think they were very concerned at the communities themselves being so segregated. The Muslim community, unlike in the United States, is not well assimilated with the rest of the society. And they have these hot spots of radicalization in those communities. I think that's what they were most concerned with when I was there.
I mean, if you can grasp this, just the size and scope of the threat, in terms of, and some of these flights that have resumed, and just kind of what we should be looking for, what you guys are looking for in terms of here on U.S. soil.
Well, I think it's important to note that I think Europe isn't a pre-9/11 state, and they are trying to change some of their laws. They don't share intelligence like we do. They don't share the databases. They don't check their own citizens past a watch list if they're flying from, say, Turkey into Europe. And these are all things that need to be corrected. We do that in the United States. So the threat level, when I say it's not as high as it is in Europe, the reason I say that is because there are thousands of what are called these foreign fighters that have traveled to Iraq and Syria, trained in the art of warfare, and many of those have come back. In the United States, to put in perspective, we've had hundreds travel, and some of those have come back into the United States. And if we can charge them, we do. If we can't, we usually monitor those individuals. But we're always concerned about an active shooter plot in the United States. ISIS, in one of their latest videos, calls for a Paris or Brussels style attack in the United States.
Obviously, Americans are always concerned when these things happen, but just in terms of what people can know and see, and more security that's being done here in the United States as a result of what's happened recently. Well,
I think it's important to also note that the last points of departure airports, those airports of inbound flights into the United States, we are heavily engaged in the security at those airports, pushing out the border, if you will. And our scrutiny and screening has gone up significantly since Paris and Brussels. But also in the United States, you'll see a more visible presence of canines, for instance. And you see these Viper teams, they call them, these TSA and state and local teams that will go around airports to provide a deterrent effect. So we have ramped up the security at airports and the perimeter, both things you can see and unseen.
Yeah. After this latest attack, you have renewed your call for the encryption bill that you've introduced. How much, I guess, do you know about the use of encryption in these terrorist plots?
Well, it was used in both of these plots. We're now finding out that in Brussels they use the same techniques that the Paris attackers used because the cells are really interrelated. In Paris, they used what's called Telegram, an app that we can't see their communications, and if you can't see it, it's hard to stop it. In the phones that we found now in Brussels, the same thing. We're not seeing anything on these phones. We couldn't see their communications in advance, which is why people say, did you see it happening or any signs or warning signs beforehand? And the answer is no, because we couldn't see what they were saying. I'm really worried about that scenario in the United States because now they're sophisticated enough to use this kind of technology. It's not like bin Laden primitive communications with K's and couriers. It's a new generation of terrorists that know how to use and exploit the internet and this encryption. We do have this, Senator Warner and I introduced the bill to create this National Commission on Digital Security. And even though in the Apple case that's now been resolved, we still have this threat of terrorists being able to communicate in dark space, and how do we handle that from the congressional perspective?
Yeah, and I know we talked about this a bit last time, but just in terms of still protecting people's privacy, though, and you're still wanting to make that an important part of the bill, correct?
Yeah, and so what we do is we have the leaders, the experts on technology, privacy, federal, state, local law enforcement, and the intelligence community to come together and form a national consensus and recommendations to the Congress as to how we can proceed. What I'm worried about are some of these knee-jerk legislative reactive proposals that actually may go too far. For instance, the idea of putting a back door in everybody's iPhone that the government can access. I don't think that's going to go over well with the American people.
Now, what about some of the comments on the campaign trail just regarding national security, terrorist plots, specifically Ted Cruz's call for patrolling Muslim neighborhoods? What's your response to that?
Well, I think since he made that comment, he kind of scaled it back to say we need to be more engaged like Bloomberg was with Ray Kelly. Anything, I think community engagement in the Muslim community is very important. When I go up to New York, NYPD has a great outreach program to the Muslim community, to the leaders in those communities, and that's very important.
Yeah.
Because only by doing that can you have prevention and see signs of radicalization and possibly stop it. Whatever we do, we have to do this under the framework of the Constitution. You can't just put people under surveillance or round people up without predication or probable cause under the Constitution.
Chairman, you on the show. We'll get you back to talk more. And
Thanks, Karina.
Appreciate having you on. Thanks a lot. More Capital Tonight right after the break.